Hello, my name is Kevin Duska. I am the president and founder of Prime Rogue Inc. Today we're going to talk about targeted assassinations, specifically what's up with them. The day after Israel took out Hezbollah Secretary General Hassan Nasrallah in the suburbs of Beirut, leveling 4 buildings in the process using some American-supplied JDAMs, it would seem. So it's a pretty momentous event as we are seeing Hezbollah experience the complete degradation of its chain of command and leadership in the context of Israel seemingly opening what looks to be like a northern front in its continued response to the October 7th attacks. Now, what I'm not going to do in this episode of Rogue Insights is talk about the morality of drone strikes. There's a time and place for that, and I'd be happy to share my opinion. But I want to give a more practical overview of them, drawing on some of the literature. And I'll drop some links in the description below, some really good books on the subject, especially Ronan Bergman's Rise and Kill First, which is specifically about Israel's drone program. But the main point is, what are targeted assassinations? They're basically premeditated killings by governments of specific individuals that are orchestrated by the national security establishment, justified on the basis of a perceived threat to national security. So if we look at the U.S. war on terror, they took out a ton of people with drones. Osama bin Laden was taken out by SEAL Team 6 in Abbottabad, Pakistan. But targeted assassinations go way back before that, especially of political leaders. I mean, the killing of Archduke Franz Ferdinand is apparently, according to some, the cause of World War I, although I would argue that's a little bit reductionist, but these are not new operations. But they have been more heavily utilized since the end of World War II, especially by the United States and especially by Israel. And improvements in technology, especially drones, have increased both the prevalence and frequency and efficiency of these targeted killings, because human actors like SEAL Team 6 operators don't need to be put at risk with a drone strike or dropping JDAMs from an F-15. I've spoken to drone pilots in my life. Most of them never even pull a trigger. There are so many drones up at any given time. But targeted assassinations by drone are the archetypal form of such assassination right now. And if you read Ronan Bergman's Rise and Kill First, The Secret History of Israel's Targeted Assassination, you're going to see that Israel gets a lot more creative with its assassinations than just drone strikes. From dressing up as its operatives as women in fake niqabs to a bunch of other crazy things, the Israelis have come up with the most insane ways of assassinating people. And as per the recent assassination of Nasrallah, Israel is basically continuing its tradition of preemptive strikes, a policy that it's justified on the basis of the supposed belief that eliminating threats before they manifest themselves is the most efficient way of doing things and doesn't cause counterproductive consequences. But as we talk about this, we have to understand that there are some legal and ethical frameworks associated with targeted assassinations. The UN Charter and the Geneva Convention, which serve to regulate warfare, protect against unlawful killings. Unlawful killings in war, unlawful killings jus in bello, jus ad bellum, Latin terms for justice in going to war and in the conduct of war. But assassination is often a gray area. If you see a general on the battlefield, you're free to snipe him, right? Him or her. If you see that general in a suburban apartment complex in Beirut, does it hold if the nature of war has changed? That's one of the ethical questions that's associated with these targeted assassinations. And Israel and the U.S. both claim that they have a right to engage in these based on Article 51 of the UN Charter, which allows them the right to engage in self-defense. Those who are opposed to targeted assassinations, whether they're by drone or by special forces, suggest that under international humanitarian law, these are illegal, or that they're violations of the foundational principle of international sovereignty. We also have to take into account there's a significant degree of moral ambiguity associated with these strikes because, preemptive self-defense targeting, terrorist leaders or high-risk individuals, through extrajudicial killings bypasses due process. There's no guarantee that the person you're killing is actually guilty. And the states that do this, the United States and Israel, are either superpowers or superpower proxies. And they tend to largely get a pass because there's no one who can condemn them or punish them for what they're doing. And legal scholars have long argued over whether targeted assassinations violate the Geneva Convention or they can be justified under international law because of the changing nature of war, and that's not something that's going to go away. A great book by Nicholas Rostow, The Ethics of Assassination, Asymmetric Warfare and the Global War on Terror, discusses this in great detail. But if we're to look at who brought targeted extrajudicial assassinations to the forefront, it is the good old US of A after 9/11 and the global war on terror. The United States kind of shifted the paradigm from traditional warfare to precision strikes targeting specific terrorist leaders based on the idea that if these leaders were killed, they would kill the movement. To an extent, that worked with ISIS. Al-Qaeda, less clear, but ISIS pretty much collapsed when its leadership was eliminated. And drone warfare is basically the use of UAVs, unmanned aerial vehicles, to kill high-value targets. Osama bin Laden was killed by a drone strike, but Anwar al-Awlaki and Qasem Soleimani were killed by drone strikes. And drone strikes are the predominant method by which these people are killed because they can loiter for extended periods of time above the target areas where human or signals intelligence suggests that the target is going to be. And the US and the Israelis typically cite self-defense or imminent threats as the legal grounds to engage in these killings. But like in Beirut yesterday, where there are dozens of people in hospital, a few dead, these do tend to produce civilian casualties. Often in Afghanistan, the US would hit weddings where these people would show up to their niece or nephew's wedding and take them out and take out the entire wedding party. Nice wedding gift. And there's also a lack of transparency because drone programs and the intelligence that fuels them are secret. So while drone strikes have eliminated key terrorists that have been targeted by the United States, they've also drawn immense backlash because of the civilian casualties they've caused and because they blur the line between legitimate military engagement and assassination itself. Medea Benjamin has a book called Drone Warfare, Killing by Remote Control, which explores this in great detail and really takes a look at the ethics of this, and it's a great book. But since Israel is the one who did the dirty, so to speak, let's talk about why Israel relies so heavily on assassination. Israel has a doctrine of targeted prevention that's oriented towards countering external threats like Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran. Since Israel was formed, it's faced existential threats, in as much as many of its Arab neighbors believed it never had a right to exist, a belief that persists in some circles to this day, even though many of the Arab states have gone on to normalize relations with Israel. But basically, Israel uses targeted assassinations as a form of preemptive risk management to remove high-ranking individuals who can orchestrate attacks against the country before they can do so. Some of the highest profile assassinations undertaken by Israel have included Yasser Arafat's deputy Abu Jihad, members of the Munich massacre plot who were picked up one by Mossad. And Mossad, which is Israel's external intelligence agency, plays a really critical role in terms of finding the info and intelligence that's needed to target these people. It has a truly global reach through the Jewish diaspora, and it has operational capacities to execute these types of covert assassinations that can bring it even into deep territories. Like when Haniyeh, the leader of Hamas, was killed in the middle of Tehran, in a guest house, apparently with explosives that had been planted there weeks earlier. And while we still don't have the full details of that, it shows the degree to which these targeted extrajudicial assassinations are so deeply intertwined with intelligence gathering. Israel says that these are critical to its national security, and that basically, even though it causes diplomatic chaos for it sometimes, that it'll basically do it where it wants, whenever it wants. And that's what the Bergman book that I'm linking down in the description talks about. Great book. Israel preempts everything. It still gets struck by missiles all the time, but it has an official doctrine of preemption. Now, what does the extrajudicial assassination mean in terms of politics and diplomatic outcomes? Well, so typically they will lead to the removal of a high-profile threat, al-Zarqawi, bin Laden, Nasrallah, but they can also be counterproductive by producing power vacuums and sometimes even increasing the level of instability that's being produced in a place that's already unstable. In this respect, they also lead these states to face significant backlash from the international community for what is viewed as violations of sovereignty combined by various forms of neo-colonialism. And Israel and the U.S. have been particularly lashed out at for this. And while they haven't been overly sanctioned by anyone they would care about, they've been investigated by the United Nations. Moreover, assassinations, especially those against bin Laden and Qasem Soleimani, the former head of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, do violate national sovereignty in as much as they're taking place without the consent of the host government or the government in which the activity is taking place. So while these can be really successful in neutralizing threats, it's important to take into account that they can bring about backlash, making countries in which they occur less stable, isolating the U.S. and Israel, and perhaps making the world a less stable place, even though they're eliminating a bad guy, so to speak, which is kind of one of the real dichotomies that's there. But what's perhaps the most worrisome about targeted assassinations is the future, and especially automation and the rise of AI, decision-making systems. The U.S. is already pursuing the integration of AI autonomous systems into its kill mechanisms with its drones. It's already embedded in some of the surveillance mechanisms. And there are talks that one day these drones could be programmed to shoot on sight based on a certain ambiguity threshold should the target at hand be detected. This, in a context where AI has so little oversight, is a massive threat to accountability. And if an automated system was to malfunction and lead to unintended deaths, that could provoke a war. It could provoke innocent casualties that just lead to nothing, as much as it could provoke a war. So as assassination is growing more common because of tech, and as tech makes assassination more easy, notably via drones and AI, the threshold for conflict is likely to get lower, and states are probably going to be more likely to use force and ignite bigger conflicts. So AI and automation combined with targeted assassinations are kind of a nightmare scenario in terms of ethics and in terms of potential downstream consequences. And if you're interested in this, you can read The Kill Chain by Christian Brose, and he goes into great detail as to how AI is going to play a key role in deciding when to use force in the future of war. But, as we, finish up this segment of Rogue Insights, and again, we'd love it if you'd drop us a follow, a like, share this video with a friend, an enemy, a frenemy. There are moral considerations. I don't really want to get into them too much, but I think I've made it pretty clear that drone strikes exist in this kind of liminal space that's kind of a moral tightrope that states have to walk in terms of national security versus civil liberties versus respect for international law. So while drone strikes or targeted assassinations can protect civilians and eliminate imminent threats, they violate basic principles of human rights and international law. The question that arises from all of this is whether they're worthwhile. Does taking out bin Laden, does taking out Soleimani, does taking out Nasrallah, do these actions make the world a safer place or not? And that depends largely on the downstream consequences. Arguably, the act of killing these people in and of itself probably does make the world a safer place in most cases. But the consequences of the kill, now that's the rub. If these kills cause greater instability, now who knows what's going to happen with Hezbollah's chain of command if there's anything left of it, and who's going to take Nasrallah's seat. Is the person going to be more of a radical, more violent, or less violent? We really don't know. And while, intelligence agencies will plan contingencies for these things, I mean, did Israel fully know who was in that bunker yesterday along with Nasrallah? One of the IRGC's top generals was there and was also killed. If Iran was in a better position to respond, it probably would, even though it seems like it's holding back. So, at the end of the day, it's up to us to figure out, I guess, on a case-by-case basis, whether these drone strikes are A, justifiable, and B, worth it. But in the meantime, if you want to look into this deeper, take a look in the description box below. I've linked a few books that I've found to be useful on the subject. As per usual, thanks you for tuning in to Rogue Insights. My name is Kevin Duska, president of Prime Rogue Inc. here in Calgary. On September 28th, 7:23 p.m. Mountain, it's going to be an interesting couple of days as we see how Hezbollah responds to the killing of its leader. Thank you for tuning in.